日本最大級の建築家ネットワークアーキテクツスタジオジャパンの提供でお送りします。
Casabella è una rivista che ormai ha 100 anni di vita. Sulle pagine di questa rivista è passata la storia dell'architettura del Novecento. Il nostro augurio, la nostra speranza, il nostro impegno è che Casabella anche nel prossimo secolo continui a documentare ciò che l'architettura internazionale verrà producendo e offrendo. Lo faremo con la massima serietà, perché la serietà è ciò che merita questa antica e nobile professione che gli architetti praticano.
Casabella, Japan.
国内外のデザイナーやアーティストが創造する空間美学。人々の輝ける暮らしを求め、創造という終わりなき道をひたすら走り続ける。建築家とは創造のアスリートなのかもしれない。今回のフォーカスアスリートはスペシャルプレゼンテーションとして海外の建築家たち自らさまざまな建築観を披露していただきます。今回登場していただく建築家はデビッド・チッパーフィールド。ロンドン、ベルリン、ミラノ、上海など世界各国に事務所を展開。その地域に根付いた建築手法で多くの作品を作り上げ、さらにカッシーナなどのイタリアモダンファニチャーメーカーからも作品を発表。類まれなるマルチデザイナーとして世界にその名を轟かせているチッパーフィールド氏。今回はそんな彼に多くの影響を及ぼしたさまざまな要素、また現在の活躍の礎になっているエピソードをお話しいただいた。特にチッパーフィールド氏の日本での活動、そして中国での躍進など、ヨーロッパの建築家がアジアにおいてどんなスタンスで挑んでいるのか。そこには建築家が一流へと駆け上がるまでの苦悩と葛藤が渦巻いていた。まずは若き日の彼の同型に開校した。
I was born in London, but at a very early age, I think at 3 or 4, my family moved to the country. We lived on a farm, so I grew up on a farm, and it was sort of, in some ways idyllic to be in a farm, but very isolated, I suppose. Away to school and then university in London, Kingston. I think probably the experience of living on a farm left me with two things. One, well, a sort of appreciation of very fundamental things, materiality of the landscape, There are certain, it's a very fundamental thing. I mean, I remember, you plow a field or you have to walk across a plowed field. And the earth is very strong. I mean, it's quite difficult as a child to walk across a plowed field because the ridges are very tall, and the plow cuts the earth and makes the earth very shiny. Where we were, it's very red earth and it's a lot of clay. So you remember the materiality. I can still see those plowed fields or smell the earth or remember all the straw in the barn, and I suppose the other is that's maybe the positive aspect. The negative aspect was the sense that I suppose as I got older, the sense that I was isolated, and I suppose a yearning enthusiasm for an excitement about cities. I'm still excited by cities, I suppose, because of that. It didn't really give me any reason to become an architect, and I'm not quite sure why I became an architect. I think when I was at school, I wasn't very academic. I wasn't very comfortable in many of my subjects, but I had a very good art teacher and a very inspirational art teacher who was very interested in architecture and really encouraged me a lot. And we did a lot of projects about architecture. I think probably that was the reason. Going to university or going to my first art school, it was quite a shock. Suddenly I was dropped into museums and things which I really hadn't had that much exposure to, I suppose. And then, you know, you're influenced very strongly by your first teachers. And I think when I went to the AA, I was lucky to be surrounded by, you know, there were some very, very good people doing very different things. Ram Koolhaas, Ilya Zengeris, Leon Krier, and like that. I mean, you had to be impressed by these people.
AA スクールで建築の学位を取得した後、ロンドンに事務所を設立。実はその当初、彼は日本で多くの時間を過ごしている。
The reason I went to Japan, first of all, was that I had made a shop in London for the fashion designer Issey Miyake. And that was really my first project, was a shop. And that was, in a way, a typical project for a young architect in England. And I continued to do many shops for many years. In fact, I'm still doing some shops. So I worked in Japan for Issey Miyake, and I did many shops, little shops, which was culturally a very fascinating moment for me to go around Japan. But it was a really incredible cultural experience, and I met lots of people. But through that process, through being there, and this was sort of bubble time in Japan, I had the opportunity then to get other commissions. I wasn't sure whether, you know, what should I be? I mean, am I an English architect bringing English architecture to Japan? But I hadn't really formulated my ideas at that point. In a way, it was really at the beginning of my office. So being in Japan and seeing Japanese architecture was one of my influences. And, you know, this was a moment where really Tadao Ando was doing his first projects and his early projects. And I think there was an incredible, you know, synthesis of modern architecture with a certain understanding of tradition. And so I found his work really inspiring. I did a sort of Ando-like architecture when I was in Japan. When I went back to Europe, it was something that was already now then quite fixed. So I don't think the work I did in Japan was necessarily very original or very important. But in my experience, it was very formative. What I enjoy so much about Japan is not that everything is spectacular, but everything is actually quite simple, but done with incredible care. Everything is considered, and everything is also sensualized. There's a very strong physical dimension to it, a strong connection with seasons. I mean, food is always very seasonal, something that we don't maintain as much as we should do in Europe. But it's also about intense physical experience of something very, very normal.
その後、彼はヨーロッパに戻り、ハインリッヒ・テスナウ賞金賞や大英帝国勲章を任命されるまでに躍進した。そして現在のステージは中国へ。
What was fantastic to work in Japan in the 80s, you were within an architectural culture as well that was a fascinating architectural culture. China is much more of a Wild West. It's much more open. I mean, it's bigger, there's much more possibilities, but there's also much bigger mistakes and much more danger in terms of professional structure. It's changed a lot in the 10 years. We've been working there 10 years, and it gets better all the time, but it's a loose system, and it's quite difficult to know how to operate. Also, I think it's just the change is so enormous, the constructions are so big, that sometimes it's difficult to understand what things mean. You know, when you're working in Japan, there's a very clear cultural context that you contribute into and you're influenced by. China is a much bigger vacuum in that sense. In terms of contemporary China, you know, it's a complete invention. But you know, there are very interesting moments. The Rock project was a very interesting project for us because we were really trying to protect old buildings, not monuments, but we spent 5 years cleaning buildings and stopping people knocking them down. And actually, when you look at the old and the new, then you see that nearly rebuilt them in a way, but in such a way that the original is still there. And I think that was a very interesting thing to do within a culture that doesn't sometimes value history enough, and to prove to people that what things look like is one thing, but what they are made of or how they feel is another thing. That you can always make an old building, you can make a new building look like an old building, but it doesn't make it an old building. And I think by doing the project we did, I think that becomes sort of explicit. But no, I think there's lots of opportunities in China. So the question is, are there cultural opportunities where you can actually do something important as opposed to just doing something? And I think there, and that's our rule in a way. My rule is I'm only going to do something somewhere if it's worth doing. It's not just the exploitation of a cultural, of a commercial opportunity. That's not, our office doesn't need to do that. There were a lot of competition, and there were no competitions in England, but there were competitions in Italy and in Germany and France and Austria. And we won 3 or 4 big projects, competitions in Italy, which I think brought us to another level in terms of the people's perception. The whole office is built on winning competitions, and probably especially in Germany, we won the Noise Museum, of course, which was the project which really changed our office, especially here. 10 years of doing hundreds and hundreds of competitions, losing many, but winning some, and building an office from that. So that was really the second phase of our practice in a way. And then I suppose the third phase was starting to build some of those competitions and showing evidence that we could build more than just a small building.
今回のフォーカスアスリートスペシャルプレゼンテーションはここまで。次回はいよいよチッパーフィールド氏のさまざまな作品に迫ります。ご期待ください。